Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back. So today I want to talk about MVP and why it's so important to me. So MVP, the idea around it is that it's a minimal viable product. And why is it so important? Is because you can get a product done very quickly and actually delivered to your consumer before it has all the different features. And just to give you an overview, in the past when developer teams used to get together. They used to do, waterfall methodologies. They used to put as many features as they could into an application, into a game. And, it took a long time until the user could see the game, the product. So nowadays, development team works a little bit different. And the way that they work is that we try to get the product out to the user as soon as we can. It doesn't mean that it's not going to be quality. It just means that we want user feedback as soon as we can. So for games, I do the same thing. I try to make sure that I'm not waiting years until I release the game, because I want to make sure that the game is going to do well. I want to make sure that the people are going to like the game, that it's going to have the features that I really wanted to have. So one thing that I really recommend is that you do MVP and you use agile methodologies. So even if you're a one person team, if you have a larger team, I think this applies to every size. And the other thing about agile is that it allows you to move quickly. So we might not do well in the first couple of times that we use agile as a methodology, but we're gonna learn. We're gonna keep iterating through that process. So agile is normally, you set up a sprint, and a sprint is composed of, it has a time bound behind it. And normally we do a sprints of 2 weeks or 4 weeks. I try to keep it 2 weeks so that I don't go too long. So what I'm saying is, in 2 weeks we want to make sure that we get enough functionality for a person to actually test your game, to try your game, and to give you feedback. So for instance, if let's say that I'm gonna make a puzzle platformer, and I'm starting from zero. So nowadays with Unity you can make, or Unreal Game Engine, you can make games pretty fast. So we could have something that is usable in 2 weeks. It doesn't have to have everything in it. It doesn't have to be super polished. It just needs to function to a certain level. So the way that I do it is I set a goal for my team or for myself, and I say, okay, in 2 weeks, what is it that I wanted to get done in that much time? And I might say, well, I want to be able to run. I want to have the character on the screen, and I want to be able to run and jump. So that on its own will be a sprint, which means that in 2 weeks I'll be able to give the game to somebody and actually try it and play the game with a little character. It doesn't have to be a polished character. It can just be, a box, and it doesn't have to have animations. You can basically just code it so that you're just changing the speed of that box. It could be a rigid body that you have in there, and you're just basically changing the speed. And then the same thing with the jump. You just basically add a force to the rigid body, and then you're good to go. So that's the idea. Is okay. So I start today, and I'm always looking at my goal for the 2 weeks, and I say, okay, I'm gonna make sure that I get it. I get the character to jump, and the character is running in a period of 2 weeks. So when the 2 weeks elapse, you're gonna look at everything that you did in the previous 2 weeks, and you're gonna say, oh, I actually finished, a functional feature about my game, and we're gonna work towards that in the next few sprints. So the next iteration, I might say, well, now that the character can jump and the character can run, now I want to be able to climb walls, and then so you work on that, and then the next thing might be, well, I want to integrate the leaderboards. I want to be able to use the leaderboards on Android, the leaderboards on iOS. So that's the idea of MVP, and then iterating through. Just make sure that you don't put too much work or too many tasks into those sprints, because we want to make the tasks as small as we can to be able to complete them in a 2 week sprint. So that's the idea of agile. It's not super complicated. It's just just getting the habits of making changes and iterating pretty quickly. And then also the other side of it is the user feedback. So you might have that feature done, you give it to your player, to your user, they try it out, and then they might say, I don't really like how the character is jumping. He might be jumping too high, or the controls are not very intuitive. He's running too fast. Let's actually slow down the speed. You don't need to change everything that the customers are telling you. It's just feedback. So make sure that you're compiling feedback. You can compile the feedback with just a little notebook. You can go and have a little Trello board where you're tracking all of these comments, and then somehow analyze the comments, and then look at outliers. So then multiple users are saying the same thing. So you want to make sure that you look at that. There's a pattern around it. That might mean that the jump needs to be higher. So you make a change. So let's say that in the end of the 2 weeks, you give it to your user, they give you comments, and then you realize that you do need to make a few changes and a few tweaks, but you already started working on the next feature. I would actually finish up the next feature before I jump in and making changes. And the reason for that is because we want to make sure that we stay on target. If you promise yourself, if you promise your team, and you guys agree that you were going to get something done in the following 2 weeks, make sure you get that done before you make changes to features that you did on the previous work. So make sure that you keep doing that, and it doesn't need to be perfect. I've been learning about this, and I improve with time. You're gonna find yourself there's always room for improvement. So doesn't need to be perfect, but you need to be consistent. You need to keep doing it, and you need to have a process. And agile and a minimal viable product, it's a process and a terminology that you got to start learning, and you got to start using. So I hope this was helpful. Thanks again. This is Dilmer. Thanks, guys.